Welcome to The Lumber Word, where industry veterans Matt Beamer, Gregg Riley, and Ashley Buckholt dissect the world of commodity lumber each week. We bring you up-to-date insights on supply, demand, and market trends, sharing our trading expertise to benefit everyone in the supply chain. Join us for informative and entertaining discussions that guarantee to make you wiser about all things lumber.
Everybody, welcome to episode 108 of The Lumber Word. And we may or may not be recording this live because I don't think I shut off any of the channels, but we're gonna roll through and see what happens anyway.
When are we going to video again?
That was going to be my next question.
I'm working on it. That's Gregg. You know how I've been in such a bad mood lately? That's one of the reasons I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah, man, you were really bitchy yesterday. I was like, "Oh man, are you okay, Charles?" Yeah, when he gets like that, right?
Well, you notice how fast I answered your guys' phone calls yesterday when you called me.
Hey, listen, I was thinking of something. Is Ash, it may be time to update the intro recording and drop Charles in. Since he's part of the pod now. I mean, he's not a guest anymore.
I got grandfathered in because of the boys' good looks.
He's in our squad. He's in our squad.
I told Charles 3 weeks ago we were going to do that.
Still hadn't done it yet.
I didn't, and I didn't listen to the intro last time. I fast forwarded it through it. And Charles calls me like, "Hey man, how's it going? He goes, "Hey, I thought you were going to put me in the intro." I'm like,
Well, I didn't even know about this.
2025 is the year of accountability for me.
So we have Chris.
It'll happen, Charles. It'll happen. Chris
Beard's coming back from John Burns. Chris, what is your official title over there? I had it on Twitter when I put it out today, and I was going to pull that up.
My official title is Vice President of Building Products Research. So I cover all things building products, talk with LBM dealers, manufacturers, listen to the public's earnings calls, do some separate market studies for window and door industry, structural building components industry. So a lot of things.
Right on.
Are your clients individual companies or?
Yeah. So our client base is think of building products manufacturers, think of distributors, think of home builders, a lot of home builders, investors as well. So people investing in the space, single family rental operators, apartment developers. So pretty broad client base.
Okay. That's a great base to pull from.
So you're traveling a lot, right, Chris? Going and seeing people?
Yeah, I travel quite a bit. A lot of trade shows. I'll be at IBS in a couple of weeks too, so we'll see what they have to, what the Builder Show has to say. See what the vibe's like based on how 25's shaping out so far.
What was the most recent show you were at?
I was at the Pro Dealers Summit in Savannah, which would have been in October, I believe. I was at Glass Build America, I think, right after I talked to you guys last time. So that's specific to the window and door industry. Window and Door Manufacturers Association conference in the fall too.
Right on. Wanted to jump into some of the things that you sent over to talk about, but I first wanted to go to Gregg, Charles, Matt. I don't know, Chris, if you heard, we had a little bet Gregg had a little bet with Kip.
The big bet. It wasn't a little bet. It was a big bet.
I heard that. I think you need a ruling on the field on that one. Was it implemented or was it not?
We don't know yet. That's the best part. We don't know yet. We're 50% of the way there.
There is no tariffs on Canadian lumber. There will be no tariffs on Canadian lumber.
I got to tell you, that was a crazy weekend going through, wanting to come in Monday, chomping at the bit, thinking that everything was going to be
all pulled up.
And then all kinds of news was coming out, and everybody
was counting their money over the weekend. They had calculators, spreadsheets.
Absolutely.
Everybody was changed. I was in Camp Gregg Friday night too, and then my opinion changed on Saturday and Sunday, and then I was like, maybe we need to sweeten the pot here. Maybe we need. Maybe you should have bet on like a backpacking trip to Mount McKinley or a fishing expedition in the Gulf of America. That might have been something.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly.
Or go look at the new spot in Las Vegas where they're going to put the new presidents up, their new statues. There's going to be like 3 of them. So I saw where Kip is extending one. He says, "Is it? Let's get a ruling on this. Is 60 days? Are we going now, or what was the official?"
Like I don't care. I mean, I'm going to win. There's just going to be no tariffs. So I mean, he can like put it out as far as he wants. I don't care.
Okay.
No, this is a year of accountability, Greg. We got to have a start and a stop here. I mean, 60 days. I mean, it gives everybody a little bit of time for redemption, one way or the other.
Sure. 60 days. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm good.
Just call it June.
Joe, interesting thing you asked how.
Well, then we're going to run. Then we're going to run into the increase in the duties, and then it wasn't a tariff.
It's not the same though. It's not.
I know. It's not. It's not.
Yeah. So real quick, Matt, Charles, Greg. I mean, started out slow yesterday, but built up a little bit. Matt, what I heard today, I've gotten a lot of inquiry for, I guess, big multifamily or big jobs where, for instance, somebody called me this morning and said, "Hey, I heard there's a lot of inventory in a lot of places." Like, yeah, there generally always is. When I go to a reload, there's always usually a lot of wood. And as Kip always says, X amount of cars cross the Canadian border of lumber every day in a good market, and about the same amount cross in a bad market. Nobody's going to go out and get extra cars to get extra shipments in a big way, right? And the same person saying, "Now I'm looking for 10 cars of 104 and 5/8 and 10 cars of 116 and 5/8." So then Greg and I compared notes this morning, and we're getting a lot of inquiry, especially on the multifamily type of studs, and have been, "Hey, we're not getting an extra $100 $1,000 on stuff like we were thinking we were Saturday and Sunday, but it's been steady in the last few days." And that's at least hopeful.
So you're saying there's liquidity in the spruce market?
Well, I'm saying there's starting to be, yeah. And the one item.
Are the inquiries turning into POs? Because
yes.
If I had $1 for every line item that I quoted over the past 3 weeks,
yes, I'd
be where Greg's at, and I'm too young for that.
They are turning into
Hawaii.
They are turning into POs, and I think if we had a faster ship time and $5 cheaper, we'd have more than we wanted.
Yeah, we actually sold more lumber yesterday than we have in any week of the year so far.
Man. Not 5 weeks. I mean, that.
I know. I'm just saying, it's like
momentum just building up.
We sold a ton of lumber yesterday. I mean, I think part of it was, the customers. Okay, there's no tariff, but I do have wood to buy, and so everybody put their prices. Like didn't have any crazy prices, and I told the guy today. I said, "Hey, here's the deal. Where we are right now, and we'll talk a little bit with Chris here in a minute on demand, but I just feel the spruce market is at best flat to sharply sideways, and at worst flat to sharply sideways."
Are you guys seeing mills doing order files now that it's delayed at least till March 1st? I mean, I think that's been the discussion was no order files, and so now certainty around we got 3 weeks to go. Or I'm just curious. I know you're supposed to be asking me the questions, but I was curious on how you guys are seeing that.
Mills came out and started the week off. They had their prices back to where they were. They started like Monday morning typical. By Monday afternoon, they were selling. Yesterday, they sold great. Mill order files are, like they still have some wood probably they can load next week or the week of the 17th. And what they're not going to push their price up. They're just going to keep selling until they can't ship until March, and then they'll go, "We're not going to sell anything unless it's got a 25% tariff on it." So then they'll stop. So, I mean, it's like the idiocy of the whole thing is unbelievable.
Matt,
but that's what I expect will happen.
Matt, what were you seeing? Because I heard that everybody that was looking at the U.S. species as the cheap species are no longer the cheap species right now.
So, I think the mills that I deal with, and then what I'm seeing internally, we're just selling lumber for next week or the 17th, like Greg said, and you get into that week of the 24th, and all of a sudden you start running into the next round of maybe we're going to have a tariff, and so there's really like 2 weeks that the mills are kind of concerned about. Liquidity's pretty good. There's a lot of demand for the good lengths, like 2x4 12s and 16s, 18s, and 20s. 2x4 9s are really good in all species. And then the bad lengths are just like, nobody cares. So it's really kind of a mixed bag right now. I wouldn't say it's a great market, but it's certainly not a bad market. I kind of rate it like a 5 or a 6 out of 10. And it's a trader's market, really. The mills kind of have to keep themselves nimble at this point. They just don't know what they don't know, and nobody knows what's going to happen on March 1st. We're all just, other than Gregg Riley, he's 100% certain.
100%. 100%.
I gotta say, after how the cookie crumbled with this whole deal and the amount of money and the resources that Trudeau's assigning to this or allocating or however you want to describe it, I gotta say, I'm hate to say it actually. I think I'm in Gregg's boat. There's a 0% chance.
You know, come
just
on.
Because you already get enough credit, right? I mean, you're your own biggest cheerleader, right? I mean, we all have to be, but.
Well, but I'm out in the wilderness. I've been like out in the wilderness. Like
nobody. I don't know. I mean,
nobody's been on my side of the boat. I mean, like throwing stuff at me.
I think a real unique scenario, and I think games are going to be played. There's a standoff in Southern Yellow Pine. You've got a species that wasn't directly influenced, right? I mean, even the North American species of hem fir and Doug fir. You know, the proximity of origin to some of the Canadian stuff is obviously relative. Shipping is relative. So there's some commingling there. But the way that, you know, pine mills kind of came out +10, +20, then up 55, and then come 6 o'clock, it's not going to happen. And now, you know, we're being told they're still moving off volume and what have you. It just makes it very difficult to believe, right? Because some of these prices and these price points just don't make a lot of sense. I don't know if they're making quiet deals with big retailers and making stuff go away and to us slowly, you know, guys on the totem pole, you know, have to kind of eat it or what. But it's real intriguing. The psychology behind it is something to be discovered.
Did you notice a difference, Charles, in the Southern Yellow Pine prices coming out of the U.S.-owned mills versus Canadian mills on Monday when they were pricing it?
Interestingly enough, some Canadian mills actually played ball to get rid of buildups and problems, right? 10 over, 15 over, not 45. They had an opportunity to create liquidity, sold an order file, and now they're in a good spot. But you know, I'm hearing guys are only quoting what's on the ground. I'm only quoting until next Tuesday. I mean, if you don't have an order file, you don't have the opportunity to raise your pricing, right? And you're only creating a scenario to where people are going to wait you out and only buy what they need. And then when they want to come in and step in and really conduct business, there's an adversarial scenario potentially, right? I'm not saying that's my perspective, but it could potentially do that because if you go up 10% on a rumor and literally that rumor is completely knocked dead in less than 7 hours of a work day, it makes it real difficult to kind of want to just hop back in and do what you got to do. You kind of just got to wait them out.
You know, we're in a period of seasonal strength as the market builds towards the spring building season. And maybe it's a good time to bring Chris in and, you know, talk a little bit about the demand side. We've been talking a lot about supply.
Yeah, Chris. So you sent over some charts for the listeners at home. Maybe we'll describe them to you. I went through them, and it's a pretty good summary of where our products are coming from, where our building products are coming from. Maybe you could jump in there.
Yeah, so we did some analysis and report that we did ahead of the tariffs. It was released last Friday, ahead of the tariff, non-tariffs, and just looking at like total building products industry as a whole. And we think, you know, it's about 30% of the total industry is exposed to tariffs. And obviously lumber is more heavily exposed to Canadian production, which, you know, no surprise to you guys, obviously. But you're just kind of putting together some scenarios. If the tariffs were to go through as promised, 25% on Canada, Mexico, 10% on China, and then rest of the world assumptions there too. We could expect to see on an aggregate all-in building products, about 5% price increases, just the impact of tariffs. And so, it's certainly welcome news that the tariffs weren't implemented. I'm kind of in Camp Gregg too, that I think that they're probably not going to be. But regardless, the volatility, right? Just like the order uncertainty as you guys went into the weekend and came into Monday and you saw it, And it's just, volatility is just not good for the industry. And so from a demand perspective, we've got single family and multifamily already a little bit pressured. Unsold finished inventory on the single family side is up. It's at highest levels probably since 2010 is what we say. And so builders, what we've been hearing from the builders that we speak to is because of that unsold inventory that really hasn't come off the balance sheets. Home buying activity, people are staying on the sidelines because of affordability. Mortgage rates aren't coming down, not expected to come down. That unsold inventory is kind of a headwind. And so we're, waiting to see what the spring selling season does, but we think single family starts are going to be pressured a little bit this year.
Where's the regionality that you really see the big pluses and the big minuses as far as inventory go, Chris?
We're seeing a lot of inventory in the in Texas, the Southeast, Florida especially. So Southeast, Southwest, Florida especially, but Texas, and some of the previously strong markets. Now, from an overall demand perspective, it's really, those are still growth areas. We still expect to see employment growth in those areas longer term, but there's just been a lot of supply right now, and that's been affecting prices, and it's also just affecting incentives. So we have a monthly builder survey. We talked about 20% of all new home sales each month, and we're just compiling the results from January. But what we're seeing is traffic ratings are down. Year over year, sales are okay. But in Texas, the incentives are outsized incentives that they're doing for the rate buy downs. Seen that in Florida too, and that's been kind of the trend.
Are any of these builders actually taking pricing reductions, big pricing reductions, like noticeable ones yet, instead of the rate decreases?
It looks like in January pricing was relatively flat month over month and year over year. So there's a lot of competition in Texas, right? It's still a growth area, and there's a lot of builder competition in Texas. So outsized incentives compared to the rest of the country seems to be what's going on there right now, and pricing's pretty flat.
Is any of the work from home mandates affecting any places greater or less than others in any areas?
I don't think we're really seeing that to a broad extent yet. We'll see how this year plays out. But the fact is, I think it's about 30% of the workforce, U.S. workforce, is still remote or hybrid environment. So that's been pretty consistent since 2021, 2022. Don't expect a lot of change there, but I haven't really seen any big, return to work areas broadly based.
Have you heard anything from any of the builders about labor supply with the immigration crackdown?
That's been the topic. I think it's a little bit too early to tell. There's been some anecdotes around. I think we've heard about like in the farming community in California, especially like citrus harvest. I've heard some anecdotes around that. I think it's a little bit too early to be seen. Construction labor does have a larger portion of undocumented workforce compared to the rest of the workforce. So yeah, I think we're still in early days on this, and it remains to be seen. But not really seeing any broad-based impacts yet. But it's on everybody's radar that it could be, right?
In the fast-paced world of North American softwood lumber, staying ahead is everything. At Fast Markets, we deliver cutting-edge analysis to keep you informed and prepared for the future. Introducing Fast Markets Lumber Commentary, your gateway to understanding market shifts and price developments. Our short-term outlook offers a comprehensive monthly overview, packed with the latest trends and insightful analysis. From construction demand to housing supply-side dynamics, we cover all the key indicators that matter to your business. Gain access to our renowned softwood lumber prices, including the industry-standard Random Lengths framing lumber composite price. Dive deep into essential market sectors like housing starts, repair and remodeling, and more with our expert analysis. But that's not all. Fast Markets Lumber Commentary gives you the tools to anticipate market changes with detailed insights into demand and supply drivers across the U.S., Canada, and even offshore trade, and what this ultimately means for the pricing outlook for softwood lumber. Plus, you get direct access to the analysts behind these invaluable forecasts. Ready to make informed strategic decisions? Visit fastmarkets.com/lumber-sample and get your sample of the outlook today. That's fastmarkets.com lumber-sample to get a sample and find out more.
Going through this deck and actually looking at your X feed, John Burns X feed last night, I saw some cool things, and I wouldn't have realized it till I saw it. Kids aren't living in their parents' basement as much anymore. They're renting, and it looks like starting to grab their Xboxes out of the basement and heading to their own rentals, right? And I'm fascinated by that, because one of the things you show here is the rent-to-own houses too is starting to increase. It's starting to we always kind of say that that's a meaningless one. We looked at it a few years ago, but how does that happen? Are these homes that builders can't sell that they're selling in chunks to these rent-to-own? How is it trending? What should we look for?
No, it's an investment opportunity, and it's consciously we call it BTR, build to rent. So a home that's actually built for the purpose of renting out, and we think that those BTR homes are really propping up single family starts right now. I think it's about 9% or 10% of the total single family starts volume are BTR homes, and so that's really been increasing. We're seeing strength in those type of homes. I mentioned earlier I talk to lumber and building materials dealers each month, and we ask them like their demand by customer type. So production builders, custom home builders, remodeling companies, deck builders, roofing, siding, window contractors, et cetera. And they've been showing stronger year-over-year sales to build to rent operators. So home builders that are specifically building a home to be rented out. That's the kind of the one bright spot that they've been saying in their customer bases. They're seeing a lot more.
Are there markets that's more heavily concentrated in, or like what markets is that the most active in?
Probably DC now.
It could be DC now, right, with the turnover, but it's really
they don't need to build them; they need to rent them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty broad based, right? So even in Midwestern markets, we're seeing that. It's because, listen, I mean, affordability is a challenge everywhere, right? It's some areas more acute than others, but affordability remains a challenge, and that's a viable solution. And to your point about the household formations for the kids moving out of their parents' basement, that is a viable option in a single family home. May not qualify for a mortgage or want to qualify for a mortgage, and so but still want to have a home. Household formations are still going to progress. I mean, the hands of time continue, and so as people start doing more adulting things, starting families, forming households, having kids, that's an option.
Ash and I are starting to think about that too, doing more adulting things. Yeah.
I actually had a kid at the gym this morning, told me he had to open a bank account and something else. He's having a hard time adulting. I'm like what? Like what? I didn't even. It's the second time I've heard that today. It's great. I love that. Are there some builders?
Charles, how's Mitch doing with adulting?
Is he adulting?
He's grown every day. It's a progress. It's a step forward. That's for sure.
Are there?
Hey, is he coming to Montreal?
He is.
He's going to Montreal, yeah.
Yeah, that'll be the Four Musketeers. Yeah, again.
Are there builders? Back to this rent to build to rent. Build to rent. What was the acronym for that?
BTR.
BTR. Better. Not like BTO, Better. Taking care of business, right? So BTR. Are there some builders that are more heavily? Greg asked if there's more regions that are heavily concentrated. Are there some builders that are more heavily concentrated?
Pretty broad based. There's certainly home builders that are more active than not. But I mean, a lot of the builders that you would think of are getting into that space because it's a viable option. It's a growth opportunity, and so it's a way to diversify business. And these aren't like, from my understanding, these aren't builders that are just, I'm going to rent now and then eventually flip it. No, this is like, these are long-term investments that are held on to. But also, mom and pop operators that maybe have just a handful of homes that they're having built and then renting them out for that purpose too. So it's pretty broad based.
So Chris,
go ahead.
Chris, I have a question. Are they the builders continue to own it and they rent it, or are they selling it to another corporation or entity to be the renter?
They're in both instances, yeah.
Okay.
That's fascinating though, Matt, right? And Chris, because not only are they involved now in the lending side through the mortgage, which I'm assuming they hold some of that paper for a while,
Yeah, their financial arms do. Yep.
And now they're also in the rental business, along with these other companies that do that, that Gregg mentions all the time, the rent-to-own companies. But that's interesting. I didn't know the builders were actually doing it themselves too.
Mm-hmm.
So do they build a whole different facility inside of the building of their organization to maintain them, or do they sub that all out? That's a whole cottage industry just taking care of rental homes.
Also both. Yeah, there's instances of both, right? That they have departments within their organization and then subbing it out too.
Wow.
Diversification of business, right?
Yeah. So what else is John Burns coming up with? Do you have a forecast for the 2000? We may have talked to you last time. What's your forecast for housing in 2025?
We started the year with a little bit of a contrarian view. We thought single family would be down 3 for 2025. We're starting to see more instances of that forecast no longer being contrarian, just because of the unsold inventory that I mentioned and kind of TBD in that spring selling season. So we're thinking that single family is going to be down 3 for the year. Multifamily is going to continue to be pressured. I was at the apartment developer conference last week, just listening in, and multifamily is still going to be pressured. I mean, just the cost of capital and the number of units that came online last year and continuing into this year a little bit too. So multifamily is going to be pressured probably double digits this year too.
Okay, so that brings up a real interesting question. So multifamily is under pressure, right? As you described, how does a BTR make it more viable? How does that in turn influence the BTR demand, right? I mean, obviously it's a part of single family housing starts, but as far as demand and cash flow and all the various things that make it worthwhile, right? I mean, I would venture to guess a single family build rent house is probably more expensive than an apartment. I mean, how does that, as far as affordability go, right? I mean, I feel like how do those two work together, jive?
Different customer base. So a different customer base of somebody wanting to get into an apartment versus a single family home. So you got that aspect of it too. But also single family rents are rising, and apartment rents in especially when you saw a lot of capacity come on, like the Sunbelt states, Southeast, rents have been flat to, in some instances, slightly falling too. So from the financing perspective, like how am I going to pay to build a single family home? If you know that, rents are rising and you can fill it versus potential vacancy rates in apartments and rents not growing or growing as quickly, then from a funding perspective, there's a difference there too.
So single family rentals are rising and multi flat to down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Chris, so are there some things that could happen throughout the year that would change your guys' forecast to much more positive or much more negative? I guess take sort of the optimistic view and then the pessimistic view. What are those things that you might identify?
Yeah, I think policy certainty is going to be welcomed. So, get rid of the volatility around, what's actually going to happen with policy, start to see some effects. The labor market continues to be is strong. It's strong job growth at the end of last year, real incomes rising. I think we get a jobs report this week too to see what January is shaping up to be. But the 10-year Treasury, which is more that mortgage rates are more tied to, the yields continue to rise, and they have risen after the election because of fears of potential inflation resurgence. And so if we do see more relief on the mortgage rates, I think there's more upside potential to the forecast. I think there was broad notion from a consumer's perspective last year that, okay, the Fed started cutting rates, and so mortgage rates are going to come down. And mortgage rates actually went up after the election and have stayed around the 7-ish range. They were down lower mid-year, and then when rates did come down, then we started to see more new home sales. And then when rates went back up, then we started to see that slow. And so that's why I think the builders were in this position of, okay, now we've got this inventory that we need to clear first before we're going to really have a strong starts growth. So that's mortgage rates, real personal income growth, labor market remaining strong. I think that's what's going to give upside. Certainly affordability is still the number one issue in this industry. And so if the policy decisions don't turn out as expected, or if there is more volatility, inflation does come in stronger and prices go up, I think there's probably more downside risk to the forecast too. So it's a little bit of TBD, wait and see. I mean, discussion, you guys know, economists hate volatility. The general market hates volatility. And so until there's absolute certainty around these things, like, well, what's the labor market going to do? What are tariffs going to do? What are the implications from those factors? What's that going to do to pricing? Until there's like certainty and see like, okay, this ship's heading in this way or another, I think things are going to just be a little bit choppy.
There seems to be a lot of uncertainty. Well, one thing I had is you guys were contrarians at 3% last year, which means that now you're with everybody else. So what I read into that is you were right last year when you guessed that. And it's always hard coming out with a negative prediction, especially when you go to events and people really like hearing economists that say everything's going to be a lot higher, right? When you're at these shows and everything. Like, that guy was great. He said everything's going to be up 10% next year, right? If you're the guy that says it's going to be down 3%, they don't invite you back sometimes. But what did like John Burns do differently that saw that? And like when you compare against all, because I saw a lot of economists and people that orbit in this home industry in the prognostication all saying flat to maybe a lot higher, right? So what did you see differently happening or that make that call?
I mean, I think one of probably the biggest selling point or value proposition of us as a firm is, number one, we have a lot of proprietary surveys. So we've got a monthly home builder survey. Like I said, we capture 20% of all new home starts, new home sales every month. I talk to the LBM dealers every month, like real time. They pull out of their ERP systems. What were their sales? And then what is their quoting activity for the next month or the next 6 months? We talk to our own clients that are broad-based. I described at the beginning who our client base is. And so I think it's just these discussions and these surveys that we have that just kind of inform. So we're not just, putting a number into a model and saying, okay, this is it. And this is it. And that's the end of the story. I mean, we couple the quantitative with the numbers with the qualitative discussions that we're having. And, you hear a lot of different things when you're talking to somebody at a conference or at a cocktail party or in a meeting versus, from just listening in on a conference call and what somebody's saying on an earnings call, right? So I think that's our value prop is we just talk to a lot of people. We have a lot of people in our firm that just are out in the field every day looking. I mean, we're walking the communities. We're seeing what's actually happening. We're talking about lectures.
Do you guys track the repair and remodel side of things as part of your, what's that look like to you?
Great question.
We do. We partner with Qualified Remodeler. We have a quarterly U.S. remodeling index that we do. We talked about 500 remodelers, 500, 700 remodelers on a quarterly basis. Kitchen and bath markets, kind of the same thing, specialized to kitchen and bath. And then, our dealers sell to remodelers as well, and we're members of associations. And so we do new construction forecasts and then also repair and remodeling. And, new construction had been stronger. Let's just say once these rate buy downs started to take effect, new construction was stronger in 23, in the beginning of 24, but R&R, repair and remodeling, remained pressured just because, there's a lot of projects done during COVID. So there was pull forward in projects, people not going on vacation or not spending money on other things. They were spending it on their home. So there's a lot of pull forward there. But then, as we saw on aggregate building materials going up 40% over 2019 levels and prices just going through the roof, and people said, well, hold on a minute. This $10,000 addition that used to cost $10,000, now it's 30 or whatever it be. I'm just using an example. Hold off now. And then as the Fed started raising rates and everybody had already done their cash out refis or they refinanced their mortgage at a lower rate, so they weren't really there wasn't much appetite for home equity lines of credit, which HELOC rates also went up. I mean, I think HELOCs were at 9% last year. And HELOCs, home equity lines of credit rates, are more closely tied to the Fed funds rate. So as the Fed started cutting rates last year, HELOC interest rates have come down. And we're now at the same levels, roughly speaking, as 2022. So as We're not really seeing relief on the pricing front in building materials. Those prices have kind of stabilized at those higher levels, but the cost of financing for those big projects is coming down. And then you think about the way we think about it too is mortgage interest rates aren't going to come down. So people are locked into their home. If they refied in 2021, even 22, at a sub 5% rate, I'll just say sub 5%, which is like 73% of all outstanding mortgages are below 5%, knowing that mortgage rates aren't probably going to get below 6 until 2028 or even beyond, then people are saying, all right, you know what, I'm just going to stay here because I really like my 3% mortgage or my 4% mortgage. And so now cost of capital from home equity lines of credit are coming down. So, you know what, maybe I am just going to undertake that bigger project. We've seen softness in big ticket remodeling. So these major projects like $30,000 and above, we've seen softness in that really since the end of 22 into 23. And now we think that we're probably going to start to see volume growth and nominal growth in the back half of this year. So we think that we're going to start to see a thawing in those bigger ticket remodeling projects.
And folks at home probably want to use that HELOC. This isn't advice for like fixing your home, not going out and eating a whole bunch of big steak dinners and then putting that on a 30-year mortgage.
Oh, get it, lock it down and head to Vegas this weekend. I mean, come on, got the big game, baby. But yeah, Chris, good point. I mean, great stat with the 73% less than 5%, which, you know, yeah, exactly. You're going to keep a big portion of the existing home owners locked in because, you know, they're not, you know, only for it's like divorce, job change, or, you know, some other like life-changing thing. Otherwise, people are going to go, no, I'm not going to do that. You're right. Yeah. Good call.
Question. Builders have to be sitting there right now. They've been trending. The public ones were always up and to the right on their charts when they were talking to all the investors on their quarterly meetings. I'm guessing that they're sitting there now going, how much inventory do we want? How much land do we want? What do we do? Have you noticed any trends with inventories starting to shrink at some of the big builders? I mean, or
not just yet. And I think that's what the anticipation is for the spring selling season. I mean, we've talked a little bit about the incentives in the form of the rate buy downs, but then also cash for options that builders, that the publics especially are able to offer. In some parts of the country, they're higher, in some parts they're lower, depending on where demand is. And so we get asked all the time, like, well, how long are builders going to keep doing these incentives? And the answer is as long as it takes, right? So we think and the public production builder, the publics, they're roughly, 50% market share too of new home sales too. So they've been able to continue to take share because they have that flexibility to offer these incentives.
That's a dad answer.
Their margins are still healthy, right?
Margins are still well above 2019 levels. Yeah.
Above pre-pandemic levels. So there's, there's room. Right.
So just one question from just the world that I live in, and I look at the Midwest. You look at some places in the Midwest, Madison, Wisconsin, suburbs around Chicago, Columbus, Ohio. Why are they doing so well on housing? It was simply because they were underbuilt. Why do so many people want to live in the Midwest again? And why is the Midwest all of a sudden sexy again?
You know what all of those towns are? They're all university towns.
That's true. They
all have the state flagship university there.
So will those go down after USAT is closed now, or no? What? But Midwest in general, but like Columbus, Ohio, we flew in there for a conference a year ago, booming, right? Because of some of the tech going into there, and it's more affordable. I'm thinking, right? Are you noticing that trend, Chris, at all? Or
yeah, it's definitely an affordability play too. So it wasn't a fever pitch overbuilding. Like, I mean, let's face it, job growth areas are still where they always have been. Sunbelt job growth, income growth is going to continue there.
Go to Nashville.
I think there's a lot of chasing that, and so we're in somewhat overbuilt situation too. And the Midwest was never really overbuilt, and so I think that's a piece of it. And affordability obviously is a big play too. But also, let's not discount, even as we're sitting here in February, let's not discount the weather too. Like, you don't have extreme weather events, and You don't really hear about major storms making the news in Chicago like you do in the Southeast with hurricanes.
Yeah.
And I think that's a play too.
Yeah, no. So just speaking of, this always comes up. People ask me questions on this. I don't have the answer to it. You see California, Florida, Carolinas, all experienced bad events, and insurance, has been a big topic. Like, what is going to be the cost of some of these areas, or what things that we normally take for granted up here? Like, I complain about the cost of insurance, but it's a very low amount to what my payment is every month, right? So where are these other, how is that going to get absorbed into the market, and what's going to change where all these catastrophes were, and how are the insurance companies going to get square on all that?
Yeah, insurance is a big issue, especially in these extreme weather event areas. I mean, California is one of them. You just look at the LA wildfires, and I think the dust hasn't settled on what that's the impact of that to the insurance industry. But they had fires before too, right? Which needed to be taken into account. And then you think of areas like Florida where they're kind of used to hurricanes, and some of the big insurance companies, even a couple of years ago, said we're pulling out of California, we're pulling out of Florida, because we just the risk is too high. And so I think that's playing into it too. I think that's also driving some innovation and resiliency in building products. So this is really interesting. One trend that we picked up on too is you've got building products manufacturers who are saying like, hey, my windows are way more impact resistant, can withstand a 2x4 flying through it from a hurricane force wind. So if the homeowner does this, puts this product in, Mr. or Mrs. Insurance Company, give that homeowner a break on premiums. We're starting to see more activity like that, but even like not even just disaster with hurricanes or tornadoes, things like that. But there's been plumbing companies that say you install a leak detection system on your plumbing that automatically shuts off if there's a leak in the plumbing system, and insurance companies say if you do that, we're going to get you a break on your monthly premiums. So I think there's some room for innovation there. We had a webinar at the end of last year, which is 25 trends for 2025, and that was one piece that we looked into, like roofing that can withstand baseball-sized hail without damage and still comes with like a 50-year or lifetime warranty. Obviously, a lot of those things need to get baked into building codes, and the local regulatory agency needs to approve them and say, yeah, you can use these products in my municipality, which is a whole other ball of wax. But I think that there's going to be some innovation. But insurance is really a problem, especially in Florida, California, and Texas too.
What else should we be looking at? We didn't ask you, Chris. That's exciting that you've seen popping up.
I think the population growth and just looking at normal, where the age cohorts are over the next 10-ish years, we'll say, we're going to see a big influx of 25 to 44 or 25 to 54 year olds and 70 plus. So what we've been keeping our eye on too is these 25 to 54 year olds. That's prime homeownership years, right? So that's when people are getting into, they're forming families, having kids, and getting into needing homes, primarily single family, but then also the 70 plus, the boomers as they age out. We're not seeing a big wave of boomers putting their house on the market and selling, but more trends around aging in place. So both of these are probably going to be spending on housing, new construction, as well as the older generation, making their homes more livable as they age in place. So positive for new construction and positive for repair and remodel. And that's probably disproportionately benefits suburbs too. So you think about, where these people typically live. It's not your, urban center. But we think that's probably going to be more in the suburbs around the municipalities around the country, moving closer to kids. We think multi-generational home is probably going to be an issue too, probably more than we've seen in the past. So parents moving in with their kids instead of.
I'm looking forward to some of my kids, building a casita in the back for me. I said if they had a pool, I would do the Cato thing and be the pool boy.
There you go. Right? Does that come with a free meal a day too?
Charles, you'd have to build me a big shack down your place though, and I'd sit on the front porch.
Charles would drink sweet tea
across my lap.
Yeah, Charles
has got a deer blind that you can put a space heater in. You'll be good.
Yeah,
no, I don't have anything that fancy, man.
Charles is like the guy.
It doesn't get that cold here.
It's like a pond is better for him on that one.
Yeah, I mean, you can swim in a pond.
Yeah,
it'll be fun.
Pool
we don't need a pool boy for that.
Do you ever do any ice fishing down there this year, Charles?
No walleye down here, guy. No walleye.
Or ice.
That's really good eating. Really good eating.
So who wants to take the prop bet on the Super Bowl this weekend that Taylor Swift gets proposed to at halftime?
It's already in the script.
That's a no.
It's already in the script.
Is it?
That's not going to happen. Just
not
like
going
the
to
tariffs.
happen. I'm selling that all day.
I will not watch football ever again if that happens.
So are we going to do a round table on who's actually going to win the game?
Well, we already know who's going to win the game. It's in the script, Matt.
What is the over under now?
I'm taking Philly. I'm contrarian here. I'm taking
Kansas
Philly.
City all the way. Not a chance. Three-peat, baby. Three-peat.
But I have a real question though. Why are they interviewing Patrick Mahomes about the Luka trade? Why does that matter? I'm just curious. Like there was a whole press release where
he knows more about basketball than most of the guys know.
I just don't understand. Did you see the tax liability that Luka, how much money he's going to lose in taxes by moving from Texas to California?
He could defer that and take a smaller upfront payment.
Is his residents going to move, or does he get taxed there just because he works there?
What do you think? It's California, Greg.
Couldn't they pay him $1 and then pay him $100 million?
Hoover it up.
Hey, Chris. First, thanks for coming on again. This is great.
Hey, Chris, but you are a great guest. Sorry, Ash.
But more importantly, how do people get a hold of John Burns? What should they sign up for? What should they do as an entry level to sign up?
Our website is jbrec.com, JBREC.com. We've got a contact form. My email address is my name, so it's Chris Beard, CHRISBEARD @jbrec.com. You can reach out that way, and we're more than happy to engage. We've got a form on our website too. We've got some samples of all the stuff that we do. Like I said, our research is pretty broad. Our customer base is broad. Anything in the home building industry. We do specialize in residential. Don't touch on commercial a whole lot, but yeah, we've got a pretty broad base and a lot of stuff that we love to share with folks.
Guys, put all that contact stuff in when you push it on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
There.
Yep. I will put that out
because the people that find him by that way, don't we get a big kickback retainer to the pod?
Finder's fee, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think it's an automatic. What do you call it? Not sponsor, but what is it? Not marketing. What is
commission?
No, advertising.
Charles, are you having a senior moment right now?
I've been talking to you too long. That's exactly.
Maybe you get a free month of LinkedIn for every referral that.
There we go. All right, guys. Well, appreciate everybody joining. Chris, again, thanks. Matt, Charles, Greg. We'll do this with next week. We've got one of the top 10 lumber traders on the program on episode 109. So
all time? He's all time, right? All time top 10?
All time top 10. So we're looking forward to that.
That's going to be awesome. Hey, Chris, thanks again. We love having you, man. It's awesome.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks for the info.
All right, guys.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Lumber Word. The Lumber Word podcast is dedicated to engaging conversations about the lumber industry, including trading ideas, market trends, and evaluations of overvalued and undervalued assets. We wish to emphasize that the discussions and opinions expressed in this podcast are purely for informational and entertainment purposes. They should not be considered as financial or investment advice. We encourage our listeners to make their own financial decisions, taking into account their unique circumstances and financial goals, and to seek professional financial advice if necessary.